Marcus Thompson had always preferred the company of cattle to people. At 52, he had spent the last 15 years running the Broken Arrow Ranch alone, ever since his wife Sarah passed from cancer. The sprawling property in Montana's Glacier County stretched across 8,000 acres of rolling hills and pristine wilderness, where the silence was broken only by the occasional lowing of his Angus herd and the whisper of wind through the pine trees. The winter of 2019 had been particularly harsh, with temperatures dropping well below zero and snow piling up in drifts that reached the barn roofs. Marcus had grown accustomed to the isolation, finding peace in the predictable rhythms of ranch life. Every morning at dawn, he would pull on his worn leather boots, wrap himself in the heavy wool coat Sarah had bought him years ago, and venture out to check on his animals. It was December 23rd when everything changed. The storm that had been battering the region for 3 days had finally blown itself out, leaving behind a crystalline world of white silence. Marcus trudged through knee-deep snow toward the eastern pasture, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. He was checking the fence line where the wind had been particularly fierce, looking for damage that might allow his cattle to wander into the neighboring forest. The sun hung low in the pale blue sky, casting long shadows across the pristine snow. Marcus had been walking for nearly an hour when he noticed something odd near a cluster of bare aspen trees. At first, he thought it might be a fallen branch, or perhaps a deer that had succumbed to the cold. But as he drew closer, his heart began to race. Huddled together beneath a makeshift shelter of pine branches and torn plastic sheeting were 2 small figures. Children, a boy and a girl, both appearing to be around 8 or 9 years old, their faces pale and lips tinged blue from the cold. They were unconscious, their thin bodies pressed together for warmth under what looked like a single threadbare blanket. Marcus dropped to his knees beside them, his rancher's instincts taking over. He checked for pulses, finding them weak but steady. The children were severely malnourished, their cheeks hollow, and their clothes hanging loose on their tiny frames. The boy had dark hair that stuck out at odd angles, while the girl's blonde hair was matted and dirty. Both wore clothes that were far too thin for the Montana winter, sneakers with holes in them, light jackets that offered little protection against the elements. Without hesitation, Marcus gathered the children into his arms. They were frighteningly light, feeling more like bundles of sticks than living children. He carried them quickly back toward the ranch house, his mind racing with questions. How had they ended up on his property? Were their parents? How long had they been out there in the cold? The ranch house sat in a valley surrounded by low hills, its log construction and metal roof designed to withstand the harsh Montana winters. Smoke curled from the chimney, and warm yellow light glowed from the windows. Marcus kicked open the front door and carried the children straight to the living room, where a wood-burning stove radiated blessed heat. He laid them gently on the leather couch in front of the fire, then rushed to gather blankets and hot water bottles. His hand shook slightly as he worked, memories of Sarah flooding back. She had always been the one who knew how to care for people, how to nurture and heal. Marcus felt clumsy and uncertain, but he knew he had to act quickly. The girl stirred first, her eyes fluttering open to reveal irises the color of summer sky. She looked around in confusion and fear, then tried to sit up quickly when she saw Marcus. Her movement woke the boy, who immediately positioned himself protectively in front of his sister. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, his voice rusty from disuse. He rarely spoke aloud anymore, having no one to talk to except his cattle and the occasional veterinarian or feed supplier. "You're safe now. I'm not going to hurt you." The children stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. Marcus noticed that despite their obvious hunger and exhaustion, they both had an alertness that spoke of children who had learned to be wary of adults. The boy's protective stance over his sister told Marcus that these two had been looking out for each other for some time. "Are you hungry?" Marcus asked, moving slowly so as not to startle them. Both children nodded almost imperceptibly, their eyes never leaving his face. "Let me get you something to eat." In the kitchen, Marcus heated up a pot of the beef stew he had made the day before. His cooking skills were basic, but functional. He could make hearty, filling meals that would keep a working man going through long days. As the stew warmed, he prepared 2 bowls and gathered some crackers and milk. When he returned to the living room, he found the children huddled together on the couch, whispering to each other in voices too low for him to understand. They fell silent when he entered, watching his every move with the wariness of wild animals. "Here," he said, setting the bowls on the coffee table within their reach. "It's just beef stew. Nothing fancy, but it's hot, and it'll fill you up." The children looked at the food with obvious longing, but neither moved to take it. Marcus realized they were waiting for permission, or perhaps they had learned not to trust offers of food from strangers. He picked up one of the bowls and took a small spoonful himself and set it back down. "It's good," he said simply. "Go ahead." The boy reached for a bowl first, tasting it cautiously before passing it to his sister. When he was satisfied it was safe, he took the second bowl for himself. They ate with the desperate efficiency of children who had known true hunger, but Marcus noticed they each saved about half of their portions, wrapping the crackers carefully in napkins. "You can have more," Marcus told them. "There's plenty." The boy looked up at him, and Marcus saw intelligence and caution in his dark brown eyes. "We saved some," the boy said quietly. His voice carried a slight accent that Marcus couldn't place. "For later. In case." Marcus felt his heart break a little at those words. These children had learned to hoard food, to never eat everything available because they couldn't be certain when the next meal would come. He made a mental note to be patient, to let them learn gradually that food would be consistently available. "What are your names?" Marcus asked gently. The boy hesitated, then said, "I'm Diego. This is my sister, Luna." "Those are beautiful names," Marcus said, meaning it. "I'm Marcus. This is my ranch." "Ranch?" Luna spoke for the first time, her voice small but curious. "I raise cattle," Marcus explained. "Cows. I have about 300 of them." Both children's eyes widened at this number, as if they couldn't imagine such abundance. "Are you going to call the police?" Diego asked, his body tensing as if ready to run. The question gave Marcus pause. Obviously, you would need to contact authorities eventually. These children had families somewhere, people who were probably looking for them. But something in Diego's fearful tone made him hesitate. "Not right now," Marcus said carefully. "Right now, I just want to make sure you're warm and fed and safe. We can worry about other things later." Some of the tension left Diego's shoulders, and Marcus saw gratitude flash across the boy's face. Over the next few hours, Marcus focused on the immediate needs of his unexpected guests. He showed them to the spare bedroom, the room that he and Sarah had always hoped would be a nursery someday, and found some of his old clothes that they could use as pajamas. The children were so small that even his smallest shirts hung on them like dresses. He ran a hot bath for them, leaving towels and soap, and told them to take as long as they wanted. While they bathed, he called his neighbor, old Frank Sullivan, who lived about 10 miles down the road. "Frank, it's Marcus. Listen, I need some kids' clothes. Size 8 or so, boy and girl. Anything you might have from when your grandkids visit." Frank didn't ask many questions, which Marcus appreciated. In ranch country, people understood that sometimes you needed help first and explanations later. Frank promised to bring some clothes by in the morning, along with his wife Betty's famous chicken soup. That evening, Marcus made hot chocolate and sat with Diego and Luna in front of the fire. They were clean now, dressed in his oversized clothes, and some color had returned to their cheeks. But they still jumped at sudden sounds and kept checking the windows as if expecting someone to appear. "Where did you come from?" Marcus asked gently. "How did you end up on my land?" Diego and Luna exchanged a look, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Diego spoke. "We were in a car," he said slowly, "with our uncle. He was supposed to take us somewhere safe, but the car broke down. He said he would walk to get help, but he never came back." "How long ago was this?" Marcus asked. 3 days, Luna whispered. "Maybe 4. We waited by the car, but it got so cold. So we started walking," Diego continued, looking for help. But we got lost in the snow. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. What kind of man abandoned children in a Montana winter? But he kept his voice calm and reassuring. You did the right thing by staying together, he told them. You took care of each other. That was very brave. Will you keep us? Luna asked suddenly, her blue eyes pleading. We won't be trouble. We can work. Diego is strong, and I can cook a little. The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. These children were so young, yet they spoke of work and earning their keep. What had their lives been like before this? You don't need to work, Marcus said firmly. You're children. Children should be safe and warm and fed, and they should have time to play and learn. That's what children deserve. Both Diego and Luna looked at him as if he was speaking a foreign language. That night, Marcus lay awake in his own bed while the children slept in the spare room. He had left his door open and could hear them whispering occasionally, their voices carrying the weight of secrets he couldn't fathom. Every instinct told him to contact social services in the morning, to follow proper procedures. But something about the children's fear of authority, their obvious relief at finding safety, made him hesitate. He thought about Sarah, about how she would have handled this situation. Sarah had always wanted children, had mourned each miscarriage, each failed adoption attempt. She would have seen these two lost souls as a gift, a chance to offer the love she had always wanted to give. The next morning was Christmas Eve. Marcus woke to find Diego and Luna already awake, standing at the kitchen window and staring out at the snowy landscape. They had folded their borrowed clothes neatly and were wearing their original outfits again, thin and inadequate as they were. Good morning, Marcus said. Are you hungry? They nodded, and he set about making pancakes and bacon, more food than he usually bothered with for himself. As he cooked, he noticed Diego helping Luna reach things from the higher shelves, the boy clearly accustomed to taking care of his sister. How old are you two? Marcus asked. I'm 9, Diego said. Luna just turned 8 last month. Do you go to school? Another exchange of looks. Sometimes, Diego said evasively. Frank and Betty Sullivan arrived mid-morning, their truck loaded with bags of children's clothes, toys, and enough food to feed a small army. Betty, a motherly woman in her 60s, took one look at Diego and Luna and went into full grandmother mode. Oh, you poor babies, she cooed, immediately enveloping Luna in a warm hug. Look how tiny you are. Marcus, these children need fattening up. While Betty fussed over the children and began organizing clothes by size, Frank pulled Marcus aside. You call the authorities yet? Frank asked quietly. Not yet, Marcus admitted. I wanted to make sure they were stable first. Frank studied his face. These kids running from something, Marcus. I can see it in their eyes. You better be careful how you handle this. Marcus knew Frank was right, but he also knew he wasn't ready to make that call yet. Something about Diego and Luna touched a part of his heart that had been dormant since Sarah's death. For the first time in years, the ranch house felt alive with purpose. Betty had brought Christmas decorations, and she enlisted Diego and Luna to help her put up a small tree in the living room. Marcus watched from the kitchen as the children tentatively touched the ornaments, their faces lit with wonder. When was the last time they had experienced something as simple as Christmas decorations? That afternoon, while Betty was teaching Luna to make sugar cookies and Diego was helping Frank check on the cattle, Marcus finally worked up the courage to ask more questions. He found Diego in the barn, carefully observing Frank's demonstration of how to properly feed the animals. Diego, Marcus said gently, I need to know more about your situation. Where are your parents? The boy's face closed off immediately, and Marcus regretted the direct approach. Our mama died 2 years ago, Diego said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Papa died before I was born. Mama's brother Miguel was supposed to take care of us. Miguel is your uncle? The one who left you? Diego nodded, then looked around to make sure they were alone. Miguel didn't want us. He said we were too much trouble. He was taking us to someone else, but I think maybe they didn't want us either. Marcus felt his heart breaking for these children who spoke so matter-of-factly about being unwanted. What about other family? Grandparents? Anyone else who might be looking for you? Diego shook his head. Mama said her parents died when she was young. Papa's family lives far away in Mexico. They don't know about us. What was your mother's name? Isabella Martinez. She worked at a hotel cleaning rooms. She was good at it. Pride crept into Diego's voice when he spoke of his mother. Marcus made mental notes, knowing he would need to research what he could about Isabella Martinez and her children. But for now, his priority was simply ensuring Diego and Luna felt safe and cared for. That evening, as Christmas Eve settled over the ranch, Marcus found himself feeling something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. The house was warm and full of life. Betty's cooking filled the air with rich aromas. Diego and Luna sat by the fire, wearing their new clothes and playing with simple toys Frank had brought: a deck of cards, some books, a small stuffed horse for Luna. But as the children prepared for bed, Marcus noticed them whispering more intensely than usual. They kept looking at him with expressions he couldn't read, as if they were wrestling with some internal debate. "Is everything okay?" Marcus asked. Diego looked at Luna, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The boy took a deep breath and approached Marcus with something clutched in his small fist. "We have something," Diego said quietly. "Something Mama gave us before she died. She said it was important, that we should only show it to someone we trust completely." Marcus felt the weight of that trust settling on his shoulders. "What is it?" Diego slowly opened his hand to reveal a small, worn envelope. Luna moved to stand beside her brother, both children watching Marcus's face carefully. "Mama said this would help us find our real family someday," Luna whispered. "She said there were people who would love us if they knew we existed." Marcus took the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. Whatever was inside, he sensed it would change everything for all of them. As he looked at the hopeful, trusting faces of the two children who had stumbled into his life, he realized that his quiet, solitary existence was about to be turned completely upside down. The envelope felt light in his hands, but Marcus could feel the weight of secrets it contained. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent in the Montana night. Inside, by the warmth of the fire, two orphan children waited to discover if their deepest secret would finally lead them home. Marcus stared at the envelope for a long moment before carefully opening it. Inside, he found several items that made his breath catch in his throat. The first was a birth certificate for Diego Martinez, but what caught his attention was the father's name listed: James Thompson. The second document was Luna's birth certificate, showing the same father's name. The third item was a faded photograph of a young woman with dark hair standing next to a man who looked remarkably like Marcus himself, only 20 years younger. "This man," Marcus said slowly, pointing to the photograph. "Do you know who he is?" Diego shook his head. "Mama said he was our papa, but she never told us his name. She said she would explain everything when we got older." Marcus felt the world shifting around him. James Thompson, his younger brother Jamie, who had left home at 18 after a terrible fight with their father and never returned. Jamie, who had joined the military and disappeared into a life that their family knew nothing about. Jamie, who had died in a car accident in California 3 years ago, according to the brief notification they had received from the Army. "Children," Marcus said, his voice barely steady. "I think this man might be my brother." Both Diego and Luna stared at him with wide eyes. Luna was the first to speak. "Does that mean we're family?" Marcus looked at the birth certificates again, noting the dates. Diego had been born in 2010, Luna in 2011. Jamie would have been 28 and 29 respectively. The timeline fit perfectly with what they had been told about Jamie's death 3 years earlier. "I think it means you might be my nephew and niece," Marcus said softly. The implications hit him like an avalanche. These weren't just random children who had wandered onto his property. They were his blood, his family, the children of the brother he had lost contact with decades ago. The brother whose death he had mourned from a distance. never knowing that Jamie had left behind a family of his own. Diego and Luna looked at each other, then back at Marcus, hope and uncertainty warring in their young faces. "Would that make you happy?" Diego asked carefully, as if afraid of the answer. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes, something that hadn't happened since Sarah's funeral. "Yes," he said simply. "It would make me very happy." Luna launched herself into his arms, and, after a moment's hesitation, Diego joined the embrace. Marcus held them close, feeling a completeness he hadn't experienced in years. These children weren't just lost souls who needed help. They were his family, his responsibility, his chance at the parenthood he and Sarah had always dreamed of. But even as he held them, Marcus knew that having suspicions wasn't the same as having proof. He would need to verify everything to make sure these children were truly who they appear to be. More importantly, he needed to understand their legal situation and figure out how to provide them with permanent security. The next morning was Christmas Day, and Marcus woke to find Diego and Luna already awake, sitting by the window and watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. "Merry Christmas," he said, joining them on the couch. "Merry Christmas," they replied in unison, though their voices carried a note of uncertainty, as if they weren't quite sure what the phrase meant. Marcus had never been much for Christmas celebrations since Sarah's death, but something about having the children here made him want to create something special. He made a breakfast of French toast and bacon, and afterward he presented them with the gifts Frank and Betty had left: warm winter coats, proper boots, and a few simple toys. Diego and Luna handled their gifts with the reverence of children who had never owned much. Luna clutched her new stuffed horse tightly, while Diego examined his new winter coat with obvious amazement at its quality and warmth. "Thank you," Diego said solemnly. "We've never had such nice things." Marcus felt his heart ache for all the Christmases these children had missed, all the simple joys that should have been part of their childhood. "We need to talk about what happens next," Marcus said gently. "I want you to stay here with me. I want to take care of you. But there are things we need to do first to make sure everything is legal and proper." Fear immediately clouded both children's faces. "You're going to call the police?" Diego asked, his body tensing. "Eventually, we'll need to involve some officials," Marcus said carefully. "But not the way you're thinking. I want to adopt you, to make you legally my children. That means we need to work with lawyers and social workers, but they'll be helping us, not trying to separate us." "You want to adopt us?" Luna asked in a small voice. "More than anything," Marcus said with complete honesty. Over the following days, Marcus began the complex process of research and verification. He contacted the Veterans Administration and discovered that James Thompson had indeed died in a car accident in San Diego 3 years earlier. There was a record of him being survived by 2 minor children, but no information about what had happened to them after their mother's death. Marcus hired a lawyer in Billings, a woman named Sarah Chun, who specialized in family law. When he explained the situation, she was both sympathetic and realistic about the challenges ahead. "The fact that they're your biological relatives will work in your favor," she explained during their first meeting. "But we'll need to establish legal custody, investigate what happened with this Uncle Miguel, and make sure there are no other family members who might have a claim." "How long will all this take?" Marcus asked. "If everything goes smoothly, several months. If there are complications, potentially longer." Marcus felt frustrated by the bureaucracy, but he understood the need for proper procedures. In the meantime, he was determined to provide Diego and Luna with the stable, loving home they had never known. The children adapted to ranch life with surprising ease. Diego showed a natural affinity for working with the cattle, following Marcus around and absorbing every piece of information about ranch management. Luna preferred helping with the horses, showing a gentle touch that reminded Marcus painfully of Sarah. Both children enrolled in the local elementary school, though it was clear they had significant gaps in their education. Their previous schooling had been sporadic at best, and they struggled with basic reading and math skills. Marcus arranged for tutoring and spent his evenings helping them with homework, discovering a patience he hadn't known he possessed. The children's personalities began to emerge as they settled into their new environment. Diego was serious and protective, always looking out for his younger sister and taking on responsibilities beyond his years. Luna was quieter but deeply observant, with an artistic streak that showed itself in her drawings of ranch life and the animals. Both children continued to exhibit behaviors that spoke of their traumatic past. They hoarded food in their bedroom, even though Marcus assured them repeatedly that meals would always be available. They startled at loud noises and became anxious when Marcus was out of sight for too long. But gradually, as the weeks passed, these behaviors began to fade. Marcus found himself changing as well. The solitary habits of 15 years didn't disappear overnight, but he discovered joys he had forgotten. Teaching Diego to rope cattle, watching Luna's face light up when she successfully rode her first horse, listening to their chatter over dinner. All of these experiences filled spaces in his heart that he hadn't even realized were empty. Frank and Betty Sullivan became unofficial grandparents to the children, stopping by regularly with fresh baked goods and offering to babysit when Marcus had business in town. The local community, known for its strong support of neighbors in need, rallied around the small family with donations of children's clothing, toys, and offers of help. But it was the school principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, who provided the most concerning information about the children's past. "I've been teaching for 30 years, she told Marcus during a conference about Diego's academic progress, and I've seen a lot of children who've experienced trauma. Diego and Luna show signs of more than just grief over losing their mother. They've been through something that taught them not to trust adults, not to expect consistency or safety. What do you think happened to them?" Marcus asked. Mrs. Rodriguez chose her words carefully. "I can't say for certain, but children who hoard food and flinch from sudden movements have usually experienced neglect or abuse. The fact that they were left in the wilderness suggests that someone wanted them to disappear." This conversation haunted Marcus. The more he learned about Diego and Luna's life before coming to the ranch, the more horrified he became. Their uncle Miguel hadn't simply abandoned them. He had left them to die. The question was whether this had been a moment of panic when his car broke down, or something more sinister. Sarah Chun was making progress on the legal front. She had located Isabella Martinez's death certificate and confirmed that Miguel Martinez was indeed listed as the children's guardian. She had also discovered that Miguel had a criminal record including charges of drug possession and assault. "The good news is that Miguel seems to have vanished completely," Sarah told Marcus. "The bad news is that until we can prove he's permanently out of the picture, the state could theoretically return the children to him." "That's not going to happen," Marcus said firmly. "I agree, but we need to be thorough. I'm also looking into the possibility that Miguel was involved in something illegal when he abandoned the children. If we can prove he intended to harm them, it will strengthen our case significantly." As winter gradually gave way to spring, life on the ranch settled into comfortable routines. Diego and Luna had been with Marcus for 4 months, and it felt as if they had always been there. The children were thriving academically with the help of their tutor, and their emotional healing was evident in small daily improvements. Diego had grown 3 inches and gained 15 pounds. His serious demeanor remained, but Marcus increasingly caught glimpses of the playful boy underneath the protective facade. Luna had blossomed into a chatterbox who filled the house with laughter and questions about everything from why cows had 4 stomachs to how airplanes stayed in the sky. But it was on a warm April evening that the peace of their new life was shattered. Marcus was in the barn checking on a mare who was close to foaling when he heard the sound of a vehicle approaching the house. This wasn't unusual. Frank and Betty visited regularly, and various ranch suppliers came by frequently. But something about the engine sound made him uneasy. He walked to the barn door and looked toward the house. A dusty pickup truck was parked in his driveway, and a man was walking toward the front door. Even from a distance, Marcus could see that the man was thin and moved with the aggressive swagger of someone looking for trouble. Marcus's blood ran cold when he heard Luna scream. He ran toward the house as fast as his legs would carry him, his heart pounding with terror. Through the front window, he could see Diego standing protectively in front of his sister while a man, presumably Miguel Martinez, gestured angrily at them. Marcus burst through the front door to find Miguel grabbing Diego's arm roughly. "You little brats caused me a lot of trouble," Miguel was snarling. "Do you know what I've been through because of you?" "Let go of him," Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. Miguel spun around, his eyes wide with surprise and something that might have been drug-induced paranoia. He was thin to the point of gauntness, with hollow cheeks and the jittery movements of someone under the influence. "Who the hell are you?" "Miguel Dimandif. I'm the man who's been taking care of these children since you left them to die in the snow," Marcus replied, stepping between Miguel and the children. "They're my responsibility," Miguel said, but his words slurred slightly. "Their mama left them to me. Their mother left them to you to care for them, not to abandon them in a Montana winter." Miguel's eyes darted around the room, taking in the comfortable furnishings, the children's toys, the evidence of a stable, loving home. Marcus could see the calculations happening behind Miguel's bloodshot eyes. "Look, maybe we can work something out," Miguel said, his tone shifting from aggressive to wheedling. "These kids, they're worth something to the right people. We could split whatever we get for them." Marcus felt rage unlike anything he had ever experienced. This man was talking about selling children, his nephew and niece, as if they were commodities. "Get out of my house," Marcus said, his voice barely controlled. "I'm their legal guardian," Miguel insisted, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "See? I got the paperwork right here." Marcus looked at the document, which appeared to be a hastily forged guardianship agreement. But even if it was legitimate, he wasn't about to let this man take Diego and Luna anywhere. "The police are on their way," Marcus lied smoothly. Miguel's paranoia flared immediately. "You call the cops." "I called them the moment I saw your truck." Miguel looked toward the windows frantically, then back at the children who were clinging to each other behind Marcus. "This ain't over," Miguel said, backing toward the door. "Those kids belong to me, and I'm going to get them back." He left as quickly as he had arrived, his truck kicking up gravel as he sped away. Marcus immediately called Sarah Chun, then the local police. Within an hour, the ranch was buzzing with activity as officers took statements, and Sarah worked on emergency custody orders. "The good news is that his showing up here helps our case," Sarah told Marcus as they watched the police search for evidence outside. "He's clearly unstable and potentially dangerous. I can get a restraining order by tomorrow." "What about the children?" Marcus asked. "They stay with you," Sarah said firmly. "Especially now. No judge is going to put them back with someone who just threatened to sell them." That night, Marcus sat with Diego and Luna on the couch, all three of them emotionally drained from the encounter with Miguel. "Is he going to take us away?" Luna asked in a small voice. "No," Marcus said with absolute certainty. "I will never let anyone take you away from here. This is your home now, and I'm your family. Nothing is going to change that." Diego looked up at him with eyes that held too much knowledge for a 9-year-old. "You promise?" "I promise," Marcus said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. As he tucked the children into their beds that night, Marcus realized that the encounter with Miguel had actually clarified something important. For months, he had been going through legal motions and following proper procedures, but somewhere in his heart, he had still been thinking of himself as a temporary caretaker. Now he understood the truth. Diego and Luna weren't just his responsibility. They were his children in every way that mattered. He would fight for them with everything he had, and he would win. Because that's what fathers do. The weeks following Miguel's unexpected appearance transformed the legal proceedings from a slow bureaucratic process into an urgent custody battle. Sarah Chun worked tirelessly to build a case that would permanently sever Miguel's parental rights, while establishing Marcus as the children's legal guardian. The investigation into Miguel's background revealed a disturbing pattern of criminal activity. police discovered he had been involved with a human trafficking ring that specialized in moving children across state lines. The revelation made Marcus's blood run cold as he realized how close Diego and Luna had come to a fate worse than abandonment in the Montana wilderness. Detective Maria Santos, who specialized in crimes against children, interviewed Diego and Luna with Marcus present. The children's accounts painted a horrifying picture of their time with Miguel. "He kept us locked in a room," Diego explained, his voice steady but his hands trembling. "He said we were going to live with a nice family, but Luna heard him on the phone talking about money, about selling us." Luna nodded solemnly. "That's why we ran when the car broke down. We heard him tell someone on the phone that he would have us delivered by Christmas Eve. But we knew something was wrong." Detective Santos looked at Marcus with grim satisfaction. These children saved their own lives by running. If Miguel had delivered them to his contacts, we might never have found them. The legal machinery moved swiftly once the trafficking connections were established. Miguel was arrested 3 states away on federal charges, and his parental rights were immediately suspended pending a full investigation. Sarah Chun filed for emergency permanent custody for Marcus, citing both the family connection and the clear evidence of child endangerment. But while the legal aspects of their situation were finally resolving, Marcus found himself dealing with the emotional aftermath of Miguel's visit. Both children had nightmares for weeks, and their carefully built sense of security had been badly shaken. Diego, in particular, struggled with feelings of guilt and responsibility. One evening, Marcus found him sitting alone on the front porch, staring out at the pasture where the cattle grazed peacefully in the setting sun. "What's on your mind, son?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside him. Diego was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I should have protected Luna better. When Miguel came, I froze. I didn't know what to do." Marcus felt his heart break for this boy who carried burdens no child should bear. "Diego, you were protecting Luna. You put yourself between her and danger. That's exactly what you should have done." "But I was scared," Diego admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Marcus said gently. "It means you do the right thing, even when you're terrified. You and Luna made the decision to run from Miguel when you knew something was wrong. You kept yourself alive in the wilderness for days. You've been taking care of your sister for years. Son, you're the bravest person I know." Diego looked at him with surprise. "You think I'm brave?" "I think you're extraordinary," Marcus said honestly. "But more than that, I think it's time you learned that you don't have to carry everything alone anymore. I'm here now. I'm your family. And my job is to protect both of you." These conversations became a regular part of their evening routine. Marcus discovered that both children needed reassurance that they were safe, that their new life was permanent, and that they were truly wanted. He made a point of telling them every day that he loved them, that they belonged with him, and that nothing would ever change that. As spring turned to summer, life on the ranch found new rhythm. Diego threw himself into ranch work with the enthusiasm of someone who had found his calling. He learned to ride competently, became skilled at moving cattle, and showed an intuitive understanding of animal behavior that impressed even Frank Sullivan. "That boy's got ranching in his blood," Frank told Marcus one evening as they watched Diego carefully guide a stubborn bull back to its pen. "Reminds me of you when you were that age." Luna developed her own relationship with the ranch animals, particularly the horses. She had a gentle touch that calmed even the most skittish animals, and she spent hours in the barn brushing their coats and talking to them in her soft voice. Marcus arranged for riding lessons, and Luna took to it naturally, as if she had been born in the saddle. Both children were thriving academically as well. Diego's reading skills had improved dramatically with consistent tutoring, and he showed a particular aptitude for mathematics and science. Luna discovered a love of literature and art, often spending her evenings drawing pictures of ranch life or reading stories aloud to Marcus. The formal adoption proceedings began in July. Marcus stood before Judge Patricia Williams in the Glacier County Courthouse, flanked by Diego and Luna, as Sarah Chun presented their case. The hearing was more of a formality than a contested proceeding, given Miguel's incarceration and the clear evidence of the children's well-being with Marcus. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Williams said, looking over her reading glasses at Marcus, "these children have been through significant trauma. Are you prepared for the long-term commitment and potential challenges of raising them?" "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice clear and steady, "these children are my family. They're the sons and daughter I always hoped to have. I'm prepared to spend the rest of my life making sure they know they're loved and protected." Judge Williams turned to Diego and Luna. "And how do you feel about Mr. Thompson adopting you? About becoming his legal children?" Diego stood up straighter, his hand protectively on Luna's shoulder. "He saved our lives," he said simply. "He gave us a home and made us feel safe. We want to be his kids." Luna nodded enthusiastically. "He reads to us every night and teaches us about the cows and horses, and he makes really good pancakes." Judge Williams smiled at Luna's practical addition to Diego's more formal response. "Very well. Based on the evidence presented and the clear well-being of these children, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Diego and Luna Martinez are now legally Diego and Luna Thompson." The moment the gavel fell, Marcus felt a completion he hadn't known he was missing. These children were no longer his temporary responsibility or even his beloved charges. They were his son and daughter legally and permanently. The celebration afterward was small but meaningful. Frank and Betty Sullivan had decorated the ranch house with balloons and a banner reading "Welcome to the family." Mrs. Rodriguez from the school brought a cake, and Detective Santos stopped by to deliver the news that Miguel had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for his trafficking activities. "You'll never have to worry about him again," Detective Santos told them. "And because of Diego and Luna's testimony, we were able to break up a major trafficking ring. They helped save other children." That evening, as the last of the well-wishers departed, Marcus found himself alone with his newly adopted children on the front porch. The summer sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reflected off the snow-capped peaks. "So," Marcus said, "how does it feel to be officially part of the Thompson family?" "Like coming home," Diego said without hesitation. "Like finally being safe," Luna added, curling up against Marcus's side. Marcus wrapped his arms around both of them, marveling at how perfectly they fit together as a family. A year ago, he had been a solitary rancher, content with his cattle and his memories. Now he was a father to two remarkable children who had transformed his life in ways he never could have imagined. "There's something I want to show you," Marcus said, standing up and leading them into the house. From his desk, he retrieved a wooden box that had sat unopened for years. Inside were photographs and mementos of his family, including several pictures of his brother Jamie as a young man. He showed Diego and Luna the photographs, pointing out the strong family resemblance, especially in Diego's eyes and Luna's smile. "Your father was my younger brother," Marcus explained. "We lost touch when he joined the army, and I always regretted that. But now, having you two here, I feel like I've gotten a second chance with him." "Do you think he would have liked us?" Luna asked, studying the photographs carefully. "I think he would have been incredibly proud of you both," Marcus said. "You have his courage and his kindness." Over the following months, Marcus watched his children, for that's how he thought of them now, continue to heal and grow. Diego's protective instincts remained strong, but he gradually learned to relax and enjoy being a child. Luna's naturally sunny disposition emerged more fully as her sense of security solidified. The ranch became truly theirs in ways that went beyond legal paperwork. Diego learned to drive the tractor and took over many of the daily feeding duties. Luna established a small garden near the house where she grew vegetables and flowers with the same gentle care she showed the animals. Both children excelled in school, but more importantly, they made friends and began participating in community activities. Diego joined the 4-H club and showed a prize-winning calf at the county fair. Luna performed in the school Christmas play, her clear voice carrying across the auditorium as Marcus watched with pride from the front row. The first anniversary of their arrival at the ranch was marked by a quiet family dinner and reflection on how far they had all come. Marcus had prepared the same beef stew he had given them on that first night, but this time they sat around the dining room table as a complete family. "I have something for you," Marcus said as they finished eating. He presented each child with a small wrap package. Inside were matching silver lockets. Diego's contained a picture of his parents, Isabella, and Jamie, along with a small photograph of the ranch. Luna's held the same family picture along with a photo of her favorite horse, Buttercup. "So you'll always remember where you came from and where you belong," Marcus explained. Diego examined his locket carefully, running his finger over the images. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Luna threw her arms around Marcus's neck. "I love you, Papa Marcus." The word Papa stopped Marcus cold. Neither child had called him anything but his name before, maintaining a careful distance even as their relationship deepened. Hearing Luna call him Papa felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. "I love you too, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Both of you. More than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." That spring brought new challenges and new joys. Diego, now 11, took on increasing responsibility for the ranch operations and began talking about studying agricultural science in college. Luna, 10, discovered a talent for photography and spent hours documenting ranch life with a camera Marcus had given her for her birthday. The revelation of their family connection had changed everything, but it was the love and commitment that had grown between them that truly mattered. Marcus often thought about the chain of events that had brought Diego and Luna to him. Their mother's death, Miguel's criminal choices, even the harsh winter storm that had stranded them. All of these tragic circumstances had ultimately led to their salvation. Marcus had kept the original envelope containing the documents that had revealed their relationship. Sometimes he would look at the photograph of Jamie and Isabella, thinking about the love story that had created these two remarkable children. He wished he could have known Isabella, could have thanked her for raising such good, brave kids. He wished he could have reconciled with Jamie before his death, could have been part of their lives from the beginning. But he had learned not to dwell on what might have been. Instead, he focused on the precious gift he had been given, the chance to raise his brother's children, to give them the love and security they deserved, and to experience the joys of fatherhood he had never expected to know. On quiet evenings, when Diego was doing homework at the kitchen table and Luna was curled up with a book, Marcus would sometimes catch himself marveling at the fullness of his life. The ranch house that had once echoed with loneliness now rang with laughter and conversation. The property that had been his solitary domain was now a true family home. The children had brought more than just companionship to his life. They had given him purpose, hope, and a future he was excited to see unfold. In saving them, they had somehow saved him too, pulling him out of the quiet grief that had defined his existence since Sarah's death and into a vibrant new chapter of life. As he watched Diego carefully explaining a math problem to Luna, Marcus thought about Christmas Eve 2 years earlier, when two freezing children had appeared on his property like an answer to prayers he hadn't even known he was praying. Their secret, the envelope containing proof of their family connection, had indeed been life-changing, but not in the way anyone could have predicted. It hadn't just given Diego and Luna a family. It had given Marcus the greatest gift of his life, the chance to be a father to two children who needed him as much as he needed them. In the end, they had all found exactly what they had been searching for, even if they hadn't known they were searching for it. The ranch would continue to run, the seasons would change, and the children would grow up to pursue their own dreams. But the bond forged in that Montana winter would last forever, a testament to the power of love, family, and the extraordinary things that can happen when the right people find each other at exactly the right moment in time. Marcus Thompson was no longer a solitary rancher. He was a father, and Diego and Luna Martinez Thompson were no longer orphans struggling to survive. They were home,